I feel like I've been so bad about Percy Jackson show news, but there hasn't really been too much, right?
Um, Not really. One like small thing is that Rick did an interview with Screen Rant or Liam Crowley,
hmm
and he just like mentioned, I forget how it came up, but they were talking about Aphrodite, and Rick
Yeah, that was the
started,
thing. Okay.
yeah, and Rick started saying like we're casting the second one, but then stopped, and then started talking about how Aphrodite looks like who they would want to see, and so that's what I know that's something that me and a lot of other fans wanted was we wanted Aphrodite to be played by different people,
hmm
and that looks like that's happening. Um, so that's great, and beyond that, the new Nico and Will book comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Their first stop on their tour is tomorrow in Boston, and that's like the main thing that people are talking about right now. Um, I can't remember anything else from the actual show itself
Yeah.
that's going on. I'm trying to remember anything from the
There was
actual
like
show.
there's so the FCC investigating Disney is
Yeah,
happening like we had talked about earlier this year. That's the only other thing, but we
yeah.
don't really have any news on it just yet, like any action items that may be happening or anything like that just yet.
No.
It is,
All I
yeah.
can really say is that Disney already brought a way to have Jimmy Kimmel come back again
hmm
tomorrow, but Sinclair is the conglomerate, I guess, the word I'll use for some of the different local TV channels around the country. Um, they're the one that caused this whole thing because they want to do a merger and
hmm
take over more channels, and that's why they forced Disney and the FCC to do that. And they still are refusing to show Jimmy Kimmel tomorrow, and so honestly, the best way to boycott that whole thing is look up Sinclair and see if any of your local news channels are owned by them. And if
hmm
they are, just like watch them one night and see who their advertisers are and write down who they are and email them and tell them that you're not going to buy any of their stuff until they stop working with them.
Yeah.
Advertisement, especially for like actual TV channels like that, is how they make all of their money. And so that's why Disney immediately was like, I'm sorry because they lost $4 billion in 2 days.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
from from
I
people
forgot
like
about that.
canceling, like selling their stocks, canceling their vacations. I saw somebody cancel a wedding at Disney World that was going to be $150,000.
Jeez, yeah.
Like people just started canceling everything, and it's not like it's immediately fixed, and people are just gonna like go back now that they said that because it still happened in the
hmm
first place. And I will say that when I was a kid ish, when I was like a teenager, like preteen, teenage age, my family and most people that I knew were boycotting Disney. We refused to see Disney movies for like 5 or 6 years
hmm
because the news came out about them using sweatshop workers to make
Oh,
all of like their merch and stuff like that. And that was a big thing back then before social media was really a thing. I remember Finding Nemo came out in whatever year that was, like 2002, and that was like the first
something
year
like that,
that
yeah.
that was when I was like a junior in high school. My mom and I sat there and like discussed if we would go see that movie. And that was the movie that made us go see a Disney movie for the first time in like 6 years. By that
hmm
point, we just would watch all the old movies from when I was a kid that we really liked. We didn't go see any of the new movies because so anyway, what I'm trying to say is like people have like mass boycotted Disney before when they've done things like this. I think they've forgotten about that
Yeah.
because they've like haven't had that happen as of late and own so many things now that it is hard to boycott. I guess when it comes to like Percy Jackson stuff, do whatever you think is the right thing to do.
hmm
I'm still like figuring out what that even is, but also just try to keep in mind when you're talking to people who are involved in the show how incredibly difficult this would be
Yes.
because you know how these people who do the show feel
Yeah.
about all this stuff, but they quite literally work for Disney. they can't say or do that much because it is their job, like whether they like it or not, and I'm sure that they don't. they
Yeah.
can't really they can't really do much. It's just a difficult situation. Like if you stop using Disney Plus when the TV show comes out, then you're not going to be able to watch it, and that's going to hurt the show. And
Hmm.
so it's like a toss up of like figuring out how you're going to feel. Who knows what's going to be happening in the world by the time we get to December when the show actually airs.
Yeah.
There are probably going to be 75 other crises in between then and now. And so maybe you'll feel differently at the time, but just like try to keep that in mind with this
Yeah.
show, that they're in a very difficult position. Everyone know they never thought that anything like this would happen when they signed up with Disney in 2020. And they've somehow become in the middle of all of this just disgusting shit. And I hate the fact that I sound like Cassandra whenever I remember when I go back and watch the video I made like 2 days after the election results happened, saying that
Hmm.
everything was going to become much more difficult with this show now, and they're like stuck in the middle of all of this political shit when when it's not supposed to be like that. This is supposed to be them getting the reward for all of the
Yeah.
hard work that they've done their entire lives. And because of him, they're now being put in the middle of this utter nonsense. And I hate it so much. It should not be happening. It is anyway. But just like
Yeah.
try to keep that in mind. Um, oh, one other thing with the new books with Mark Oshiro or
Hmm.
Oshiro. I read an article about how to pronounce his name. It's Oshiro, and um, there was an article talking about the new book, and they used the term intergenerational trauma, and I was
Hmm.
like, oh, okay. And like obviously this is Percy Jackson, they bring that up pretty often, but still I always get excited when like an article like knows that word and like mentions it and knows what they're talking about. That's always fun. But
Hmm.
they said the thing in the book they brought up was just the overall idea of like, can you change who you are if you've been one way your entire life? And I
Yeah.
know I sent that to Mandy and I was like, well, we don't know anything about this. Like
Yeah.
being sarcastic because that's our entire lives.
Yeah.
Literally. That's at least our entire friendship. Literally changing every single facet of my entire life in the last 7 years. Like I don't
Hmm.
know who 2017 me is. That's a stranger. Every year since that I watch a video from a year ago and I'm like, who the hell is that?
Yep.
It is like a cool thing, but it makes me really excited to read, like to let people spoil me about the book when it officially comes out tomorrow, just because I want to know like how far they go with this stuff, because I know what I want. I know when I
Hmm.
heard about this book many months ago, I said like I want them to go hard on the whole thing, that you can decide to be whoever you want to be, even if you come from people that are quote unquote bad.
Yeah.
That the monsters in these books don't have to stay that way. And especially considering that this all started because Percy, in a roundabout way, turned Bob into Bob
Hmm.
in the sort of Hades short story, and then also treated him just like a human being when they were in Tartarus, the most like dehumanizing place you can possibly imagine. But that all happened in this like make believe world because him and Annabeth gave that person empathy instead of being like, oh, you were evil once, so you're just gonna stay evil forever.
Hmm.
And instead, they're like, no, he can make a choice and decide he doesn't want to be, and he doesn't want to be. Bob is just Bob now. He's not anything like he used to be. Um, so I love that, and I'm trying to think of there is something. Oh, with YouTube, YouTube has
Hmm.
this new thing they're doing where they
Okay.
have what they call hype points, and it's
Hmm.
like down where you watch put comments. That's what this is supposed to be, where you put comments in a video. And so if you want to do that in our video, that would be appreciated, because I guess that's some weird new thing they're doing to where if you do that enough to a video, they'll show it to more people. And I was like,
Okay.
"Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
We could.
fun."
We could always use the boost. That's fun.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things, but that's pretty much all that's been going on lately while the world is just on fire.
Yeah, I'm honestly just like locking into school because I'm like, I don't want to know what bad things are happening. Can we just not? Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I have found like Percy Jackson has actually been a fun topic at school lately. I found people that like it. So that's nice.
There's people
Um,
everywhere that like it.
exactly, exactly. I found somebody who's like, I started with the movies and then was like, I'm not gonna read the books. The movies are awful, and she had to have people tell her,
Like, no,
sorry,
no,
but
no,
the
no, go back.
movies, yeah, the movies are bad. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was pretty cute. But yeah, like Percy Jackson just continues to be our bright spot, and hopefully the show they can keep going with everything that's happening right now and all of the crazy censorship crap.
Yeah. Oh, and Rick said something, I think, in between our last episode about how he's working on the script with the dam scene. Which
Yes.
I also just want to bring that up for people to keep in mind that this show doesn't have every episode finished at all when they
Hmm.
start filming. Like people are talking about like, oh, what they're gonna do in the final episode. They haven't written it yet.
Yep.
They quite literally haven't written it yet. And so can we relax? Some of the time when we're talking about this stuff, when people are like, oh, they're gonna cut Rachel. They haven't even gotten to that episode yet. Now they have.
Yeah.
Now. But like back in like July, they hadn't even gotten close to that episode yet. Just try to keep that in mind. Like
Yeah.
maybe.
And it really is a fair argument. They might not want to hire a girl to play Rachel for literally one scene and then
Hmm.
figure it out again later for all of season four.
It'll be fine.
Um, so yeah, we'll be okay.
So, hey, to go into these chapters, are they're very like
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff that happens in them. My overall like theme thing that I know I'm going to talk about as we go through these is to counteract the marvelication. Is that a word? Marvelication of Percy?
Yes.
Like stop make like people are trying to turn Percy Jackson into a Marvel movie character or a superhero, and it's really weird. And these chapters give me a million examples to point out like why he's not that at all, which thank
Yeah.
God. But
And
either way,
what this chapter, okay, so we both set out with like random things to prove once we started reading the text because my thing was seeing all the instances where it's like Percy would not have joined Luke's side. Percy would not have joined Luke's side. I kept saying that over and over again while he's
never,
having these different thoughts while he's observing things on the battlefield.
never.
And it's just like even from how he talks about other demigods without knowing who they are.
You
That's the
never,
main difference. Yeah.
never. This is why I always say like never, never. Whenever somebody
Yeah.
brings that up, I just keep saying no. He would never. It doesn't matter what would have happened to him. His mom could have died in a fire when he was
Hmm.
3. It never would have happened. He would never do that. There's nothing that could have happened to him to make him do that. It is a cope to try to make Luke less of a monster. To say that he would do that, that is the only reason to bring that up. And in that case, you're making his victim a worse person to make the abuser better. If you
Yeah.
don't like it when people do that in real life, stop doing it with fictional people too.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God. So I never have to see people say that again, because it happens a lot.
Yeah, so to get into where we left off, they had just left Olympus. They knew that the Titans were going to strike Manhattan while all the Olympians are gone. And so it's basically just the kids left, and it's this group
Hmm.
of like 40 kids. So we're on chapter 10. I buy some new friends, and we start out with this like kind of sign language conversation with Argus
Hmm.
because he's still there with them. Him and two harpies had driven the bands, and so um, actually, this might be a Rick invention completely, but Argus supposedly doesn't talk because he has an eyeball on his tongue, is the
Hmm.
reason why he's like pantomiming instead of
Hmm.
actually having the conversation. Percy sends him back to camp and tells him to guard it because I mean that's his purpose. That's why he has so many eyeballs.
Hmm.
Um, and he tells him I'm staying. And he draws a circle in the air with his finger at Annabeth, and she says, "Yes, I think it's time." Um, and he brings out a shield that Beckendorf had made before he passed away. And so this is the part that I was like having trouble figuring out what they meant by it. The shield bends sunlight or moonlight from anywhere in the world to create a reflection. So like it just takes the light and then it can see any place that they want, is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting from it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm overthinking it. I'm like, wait, how does that work? What? Find out kind of this magic that Morpheus has used over New York. It's a very thin layer of magic, and that's why it affects so many people, but that's why it's also only affecting the mortals, is because, like, it would take more powerful magic to actually affect the demigods, too.
Oh yeah, that's something that Selena knows.
Hmm.
She says that, which is always interesting to think about, of like
Yeah.
having her have like things that she's just good at, except for everything else that she's known for in this book series.
Yeah. So, and it's when she says that, Percy stares at her and he's like, "When did you learn so much about magic?" She says, "I don't spend all my time working on my wardrobe." Um, but yeah, I also was like, I don't like that she knows so much about that.
I know.
Um, they realize as they're looking through this, there's a 50-mile radius around the island where time is running really, really slow. So the closer you get to Manhattan, the slower it is. That's why there's no help coming from outside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. And Katie Gardner notices Hecate might be helping. Look at how the cars are all veering away from the Manhattan exits when they're like looking at people driving in towards Manhattan. They're subconsciously turning back and they're not asleep, but they're kind of zombie like and definitely moving slower. Shield has shown us at least 300 enemies on the way. There were 40 of us and we were alone. Um, Annabeth, our strategist, she knows Aeolus has like some people working on the wind, so they're probably going to try for ground assault and also the boats. And that's when Percy remembers Athena said, "Remember the rivers." So he starts sending everybody out to different places. Let's see. So he has the Apollo cabin take the Williamsburg Bridge. Demeter cabin takes the Brooklyn Bridge. He specifically says grow thorn bushes and poison ivy in the tunnel. Do whatever you have to do, but keep them out of there. Um, Hermes is going to take the Manhattan Bridge, or part of it, Connor with the Hermes cabin. Travis is going to take the Brooklyn Bridge. Aphrodite take the Queens Midtown Tunnel, which on their way, this was just like such a weird like inclusion from Rick that I'm not a perfume person. I actually don't really wear perfume at all. But one of the Athena girls is like, "Oh, so Fifth Avenue is on our way. We can accessorize." And monsters like totally hate the smell of Givenchy. And I'm just like, I need to know what this one smells like now because Rick probably has a particular beef with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I hate perfume.
yeah.
It gives me a migraine.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm like, it's pretty once in a while, but it's not really for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he tells the Aphrodite girls, no delay, but I mean, like, if you think the perfume thing will actually work, I guess go for it.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Um, the Holland Tunnel. Jake takes the Hephaestus cabin to the Holland Tunnel. He tells them to use Greek fire to set traps.
And they're
Um,
really excited about that.
Yes. He starts calling out an order to Clarice. He says the 59th Street Bridge and he says her name. But then Annabeth is like realizing he's about to like get
Yeah.
sad about Clarice not being there. She's like, "We'll take it." And so she sends the Athena cabin. And I also like this is of course going to come up in a bigger way later, but she is telling the Athena cabin as they're leaving, activate plan 23. So we
Mm-hmm.
know that they also already know this plan that Daedalus had come up with. Um, let's see. She's going to go with Percy. And then they realize, hold on, where is it that they realize they forgot somewhere? Um, let's see, hold it, Percy. Jake Mason said, you forgot the Lincoln Tunnel. And he says, I bet back a curse. He was right. A Sherman tank and hundreds of monsters were marching through the tunnel right now, and I'd positioned our forces everywhere else. Um, but just then, a girl's voice calls out, how about you leave that to us? And it turns out to be Thalia and the hunters. And so they're showing up in their silvery camouflage, ready to go. And I love that she's wearing a Death to Barbie shirt. It's such a like show of the times that Rick did this.
Hmm.
For those of you guys that were not around for the first emo era, it's like there was a resurgence of Barbie pink for a second, like bright hot pink, and it became a thing to where like boys were saying, "Oh, I'm a boy that likes pink," and it was like a really weird moment in time for hot pink. And so, of course, then you had the anti-pink movement, which was girls that were like, I hate everything pink and Barbies and girly and no. And so that's kind of what he's playing into with Thalia. She's kind of giving a little bit of pick me there, but it's very much a sign of the times.
That was just me growing up, like
Yeah.
without even trying. Like in the early '90s,
Hmm.
my sister and I gave our Barbie dolls to our dogs so they would rip the heads off of them. In like
Yeah.
1992, because she likes pink. I've always hated pink, and I hate it when people are like, "That's just anti-feminine." I'm like, I just hate that color pink.
Yeah.
I'm just not a girly girl. I don't like pink. I don't like Barbies. I don't really like dolls. I don't like anything feminine. I don't like anything like that. It's
Hmm.
not because I hate women. It's just that I don't like it.
Yeah, we've had like a weird relationship with gender roles as millennials, where like they were more forced upon us than other generations. So you do see like there's there are still people where it's like I'm going to avoid things that are traditionally one
Hmm.
gendered, just because it was shoved down our throats so much that it's kind
Hmm.
of the like there's still an instinct of like, eh.
What was I gonna? Oh, this this whole part. I guess like the point to make about this whole part is that like what you said, they're cut off from everyone else in the world. That is the
Yeah,
point. That New York City is cut off from everybody. That they can't ask for help. They already know that the gods can't help them, but nobody can help them except
yeah,
for who is already within like the city. Like I honestly don't even know how Clarice and Ares gets to them because they're even like affected by what's going on with all the spells and stuff that Cronus is doing. But these are
yeah.
40 kids. They showed up here. Percy's been awake for like over a day basically. The only time he slept during this story so far is when he passed out when he was in the cell that Hades threw him in. That I
Mhm.
don't know if that really counts because
Yeah,
that wasn't very long, but either way, like they don't really they're just kind of it's like okay, I guess this is just what we're going to do now, and there's only 40 of them and they're kids. The
yeah,
oldest one that is there are like 17 or something, 17, 18. I think Selena and like Clarice if she was there
yeah.
is the oldest one. And I can't remember if this already happened yet or not, but I do remember that Michael you even mentions that yeah, I gave the chariot back
Yeah.
to her and she still didn't come.
Not yet. We'll get to that because that has a tie back to the Iliad. Um, but so Thalia shows up, and I do like the tiny bit of catch up we get with her because what we remember from the beginning was that they said no one had heard from her for a couple months, and
Hmm.
Percy notices he's like, you've been gone for like a year, but also there's like twice as many hunters now. So that's what she's been doing is she's been doing her own recruitment, girl bossing it up, getting some girls on the winning side. Because like I mean, when you think about the fact that the satyrs even had to stop their recruitment and their finding of demigods, she was probably the only one out there finding demigods for a second.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
And
so
also like just a reminder that Thalia went from being in charge of all of the demigods to being in charge of all of the hunters. She's not
yes,
just like another hunter. She took Zoe's spot
yes.
as like second in command. She can't do anything unless she gets to boss everybody around.
Pretty much. It's just where she fits in the most,
Yeah.
I guess. Um, I do love also. So, she when Percy's like, what have you been up to? She says, long, long story. I bet my adventures were more dangerous than yours, Jackson. And he just says, complete lie. Um, comes back with, we'll see. After this is over, you, Annabeth, and me, cheeseburgers and fries at that hotel on West 75th. And for me, that's very much giving the same energy as like Legolas and Gimli in Lord of the
Mm-hmm.
Rings,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where that's what their relationship has developed into, which is honestly what it always should have been. It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, they want to pit us against each other and we like each other, but okay, why not?
Yeah, they're just friends, and that's just their fun way of like snarking at each other back and forth. But they are definitely friends and get along now, which thank God, because that was bad
Yes.
enough for one book.
So, Thalia engages her Aegis, and then they set off. And as he's like sending everybody off, one of the things Percy says is, "You're the greatest heroes of this millennium." I told them, "It doesn't matter how many monsters come at you, fight bravely and we will win for Olympus." And that for me is one of the instances where it's like, this is him being a good leader.
Hmm.
This is good leadership, and good leadership is continually a theme for me in Greek mythology because we have heroes that are bad leaders and we have
Hmm.
some heroes that are great leaders. Percy is one where his leadership comes from recognizing everybody else, and I really love that about him.
Yeah, I honestly think that's what makes a good leader, is when you when you can recognize other people's strengths around you, and just kind of know what to say to give them hope. Um, because it is true, they are the strongest demigods ever because they're just left alone.
Hmm.
And that's part of the this whole thing of when people try to say that Luke is whatever, is like Luke is the one that put them in this situation. All of
Yeah.
these kids are cut off from everybody, and they're just like, imagine how scary that would be to just go to New York not knowing that that's going to be like the last time you're going to be able to leave for like many days, and then you're cut off from everyone. There's no help coming, and the most dangerous beings in the entire world that could possibly exist are all taking turns attacking you, and no one is going to help bail you out. You're just left on your own. Like, the kid that is leading you is not even 16 years old yet,
Yeah.
and a couple, like, one of them has already died, though one of the older ones that was supposed to help them is already dead. But I did want to bring that up with Charlie dying before I forget, that you can see what Luke slash Kronos' plan was, because if they hadn't blown up the Princess Andromeda, the Princess Andromeda probably would have landed at camp, killed everybody at camp, and then they would have just taken over New York City and gone up to Mount Olympus, and then it just would have been over. And
Hmm.
that's probably what their original plan was, and
Yeah.
Charlie killing himself like that stopped them from taking out camp, which made everything stall long enough for them to actually be able to win in the end. But that was definitely their plan. But either way,
Yeah.
that's why I have zero like sympathy or empathy or any of that for Luke ever. It's because I'm like, you're the reason why these kids are having to go through this horrible mess. They should not. They're literally children.
Yeah.
They should not be experiencing this. Like Will, like there's a part in this chapter they bring up Will Solis. He is 13.
They finally all set off. We find out that when Morpheus put everybody to sleep, most of the drivers had apparently tried to pull to the curb when they felt themselves passing out, but still the streets were too clogged to navigate. So Percy and Annabeth first consider stealing a car, but a car is not going to be able to navigate. Like the closest I could think of is I was once on a freeway, like entrance where it was very, very narrow when an
Mm-hmm.
ambulance came in. And of course, most people are smart and are like, okay, I'm going to pull over to the right. But of course, there's one or two idiots that pull over to the left, and then it like makes you, like there's not enough room to get in, and it's stupid. That's what I'm picturing here is just like people all over, just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that there's not even one clear car path through.
Mm-hmm.
So they eventually find a courier that had a Vespa, and they take him off the scooter and take his Vespa instead. Um, Percy, of course, worrying with any luck I'd be able to bring his scooter back. If I didn't, would hardly matter because the city would be destroyed. So they take off on their Vespa. Our progress was slow. Every so often, we'd come across pedestrians who'd fallen asleep right in front of a car, and we'd move them just to be safe. Once we stopped to extinguish a pretzel vendor's cart that had been caught on fire. A few minutes later, we had tried to rescue a baby carriage that was rolling aimlessly down the street. It turned out there was no baby in it, just somebody's sleeping poodle, go figure. We parked it safely in a doorway and still kept riding. So, this scene that Rick starts painting in Manhattan is that because some people literally fell asleep where they were, this it gets increasingly more dangerous the longer that they are asleep,
Mm-hmm.
because of things like fires, because like eventually Percy even gets to wondering how many people were cooking when they fell asleep, and
Mm-hmm.
if their ovens are still on or their stoves are still on, there's something still on it. Eventually that's going to catch on fire, and they're asleep in a house where there's a fire. Hello. Like, and it really seems like the demigods, they do care about this as it's happening, so it's constantly just an obstacle of like, well, shoot, these mortals are going to wake up in the worst situation ever, so we got to move them before we keep on with this fight.
Mm-hmm.
Which just sounds really frustrating, which like just incredibly frustrating to have to stop and start like that. Annabeth went by a bronze statue on a marble red pedestal. I probably passed it a million times but never really looked at it. Um, Percy asks her, "Why do we care about William H. Stewart, which is the name on the plaque?" She says, "He was a New York governor, minor demigod, son of Hebe, I think, but that's not important. It's the statue I care about." It turns out most of the statues in the city are automatons. Daedalus planted them here just in case he needed an army. And Percy asked to attack Olympus or defend it. Annabeth shrugged. Either one. That was plan 23. He could activate one statue and it would start activating its brethren all over the city until there was an army. It's dangerous though. You know how unpredictable automatons are, which of course they're talking about Bianca there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this plan though, plan 23. So we have Annabeth dispatched other Athena kids and told them about this. So they're going and activating statues. We have statues activating other statues. So we have to imagine that this is actually going to be a pretty quick process because of how organized it is.
Mm-hmm. And also, just to like make the point, this book was written before Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows came out.
Yes.
So if anybody copied anybody, she copied him.
Hmm.
Thank you. Because that's one of those things people bring up of, oh, he copied J.K. Rowling with the whole, like, things coming alive during the last battle. I'm like, no, he wrote this first. She didn't put out her last book for a couple years after 2009.
Yeah. And this is a little bit riskier because they don't even know what's going to happen with this. Like
No. And they're in the entirety of,
yeah.
like, all of the boroughs, basically, of New York City. Not just, like, the one singular school that everything happens at. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and it was like the suit of armors, right? That was such a bigger scene in the movies than I remember it
Mm-hmm.
being in the books of her being like, "Oh, I've always wanted." It's a Maggie Smith scene. It's not a J.K.
Mm-hmm.
Rowling scene. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's where that actually comes from. But yeah, so we have them doing this plan. They talk to the automaton. Annabeth says, um, let's see. Hello, Governor Seward. Command sequence Daedalus 23, defend Manhattan, begin activation. So he jumps down and then he heads east. Annabeth says probably gonna wake up Confucius. And one thing from this part after they activate this first statue is Percy says, um, and then, like, what'll happen after they keep activating each other? She says, hopefully they defend Manhattan. And he says, do they know that we're not the enemy? I think so. That's reassuring.
That's the
So,
important thing.
yes. Yes. So, this is what I'm talking about with it being riskier than, like, just bringing some suits of armor to life.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have no idea whether this plan will actually come through. So, it's
Mm-hmm.
very much a Hail Mary.
And either way with this part, they this part, the overall thing I thought of was just Rick showing like the difference between Percy and the demigod kids and Luke and his side, that they even care like
Mhm.
about what's like that they, are moving people away from dangerous things, are thinking about what's going to happen to them if they're asleep for too long. And just the fact that they took the time to do that kind of stuff when they're trying to like rush before people try to kill them. Um, but it is like a thing of like they do care. They actually care
Mhm.
about these people. They see them as human beings still. They're not just like collateral damage, because Luke's team is basically eugenics on steroids. Which, like, if
Pretty
you don't know what
much.
eugenics is essentially the idea that that like based on just like your genes that you are better, smarter, above other people, and that other people that are less than of you just need to be like eradicated so that the good people can make all the babies and have all the children, and society will be somehow better if all the people with the really special great genes are the ones that procreate and other things like that. And
Yeah.
so Luke's side doesn't he said it in the first book at the end. He is like, yeah, everyone is gonna go back to the caves or die who's not on my side. He thinks that it's like it's an like an acceptable risk for
Mhm.
not only all the demigods but all these innocent people in New York City that didn't do anything to die. They don't care
Yeah.
like what's gonna happen to these people. You should care because they have nothing to do with anything. And that's just one of those things from this series that I always like, is that when their stuff starts affecting humanity is when they're like, okay, we need to like back off. Even the gods, with like the when the prophecy happened in the first place during World War II, it happened because they were like, okay, we really fucked up and we need to like
Mhm.
not do this anymore. We caused this gigantic mass war that killed millions of people. Let's just stop having kids because let's not have that happen again. But it's just the overall idea, even with them, that like once it starts affecting humanity, you need to back off and stop because they're seen as like innocent people in this series that have nothing to do with anything that's going on.
What Percy figures out that Athena meant by remember the rivers. And so they park outside Battery Park at the lower tip of the Manhattan where the Hudson and East rivers came together and emptied into the bay. He has Annabeth wait while he goes, and he gets into the water, which he says was so murky that any mortal person that tried to do this, they would become radioactive or they would
Mm-hmm.
have mutant children. But eventually, he gets to the point where the two currents of the rivers meet, and he starts shouting at it. Um, and it's so funny because his first instinct is to insult. It's like, hey, I heard you guys are so polluted, you're embarrassed to show your faces. Is that true? And then he says, I heard the East River is more toxic, but the Hudson smells worse. Or is it the other way around? And um, at first, he's like, wait, should I be doing this? But these were New York river gods. I figured their instinct would be to get in my face, which I love
Mm-hmm.
the animism of it. So, animism for those of you guys, it's kind of what a lot of polytheistic religions fall under, especially when they have nature deities in the same way that Greek mythology does, where
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like every tree has their own essence, every river has their own essence. And you look at, I mean, talking about the Achilles curse and a river, Achilles takes on a river after Patroclus dies. We talked about this like briefly in Madeline Miller, and it's not really one of those things where I'm like, oh, this is such a great Achilles story. It's not to me, but it
Mm-hmm.
just is a thing. Like each river has its own spirit, and it has an interest in protecting itself. And so the idea that we have the Hudson and the East River like being literal gods that have New Yorker attitudes is just really hilarious to me.
Yeah, that's just how I always kind of picture that stuff. Like, I haven't actually read this book series, but it's one of those that I have to, because N.K. Jemisin wrote it, and she is a god of authorship. Oh my Jesus Christ! Her Stone Sky series is one of like god tier books. I can't
Hmm.
even describe how good those books are. Holy shit! But she has another series that involves New York City, and it's about all the different boroughs and all the different parts of the city being like humanized in that way. But it is just one of those things that when you live somewhere, it does feel like a person. It feels like a part of you, or like another like extension of you because you live in this place for so long. It has like personality. Like even where I live in Wisconsin, we talk about like where we live and like the things that are around us in that sort of way,
Yeah.
because it's just it has its own like almost personality of how it acts and what we see and what happens here based on like the weather and stuff here, which is very different from New York City, but it's the same general idea, I guess. Either way, this part is fun.
Yeah. So we have the East Rivers described as a creature that looks disturbingly like a telekine. His face was wolfish. His body was vaguely like a seal's, sleek black with flipper hands and feet. His eyes glowed radiation green. And then the Hudson, it says, is more humanoid, dressed in rags and seaweed with chainmail coat made of bottle caps and old plastic six-pack holders. His face was blotchy with algae, and his beard was overgrown. His deep blue eyes burned with anger. And so they kind of start like immediately preparing to fight Percy. Let's see. So they come out hot, and Percy yells, hold on, we've got a bigger problem." They're like, "Yeah, let's both kill him. Like, let's get this kid." And right away, they start throwing garbage at Percy. So, like, all of the pollution in the rivers, broken glass, rocks, cans, tires. But luckily, he was expecting it. So he like shielded himself with some water in front of it. Water or the debris bounces off harmlessly, and that's when the river gods are like, "Oh, son of Poseidon," and he took a dip in the Styx. Okay, they like exactly know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's perfect, he said. Now, how do we kill him? We could electrocute him, Hudson mused. If I could just find some jumper cables. I love that we're getting into like street
Mm-hmm.
gang territory with this. Um, so Percy's like, "You guys, Kronos' army is invading." They're like, "Okay, we know. Like, they're on our rivers, duh." And so Percy's like, "Stop them, drown them, sink their boats." Hudson says, "Why should we?" So they invaded Olympus. What do we care? Percy says, "Because I can pay you." And he takes out the sand dollar, which was a present from Poseidon. Was it in at the very end of
Mm-hmm. When he
Battle of the
comes to
Labyrinth?
his
Yeah.
house and shows
I'm
up
trying
and
to remember
scares
how long
everybody.
ago. Yeah. And so he the river gods both want it. "It's mine. Give it here. I promise none of Kronos' scum will get across the East River." Um so Percy's like, "We'll compromise." He breaks the sand dollar in half. And he says, "You each get half. In exchange, you keep all of Kronos' forces away from Manhattan." Um, they decide it's a deal because the seashell, it turns out, has the power of Poseidon, which the East River says he's a jerk, but he sure knows how to sweep pollution away. And
Mm-hmm. They finally will be clean.
yeah, so they say it's a deal. They each get their half a sand dollar. And Percy's like, "Okay, so the invaders," they're like, "Oh, it's already taken care of. We already got them." Like, and so yeah, they basically instantly sunk the ships. Um, Before he parts with the two rivers, Hudson says, "Curse of Achilles. They always think that'll save them, don't they?" If only they knew, East agreed. They both laughed, dissolving into the water. So, um, I kind of love that they have that continued lore of,
Mm-hmm.
the Achilles curse plus river god.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, back on the shore, Annabeth was talking on her cell phone. He tells her it was safe, and she says, "Good, because we've got other problems. Michael, you just called. Another army is marching over the Williamsburg Bridge. The Apollo cabin needs help, and Percy, the monster leading the enemy, it's the Minotaur." So that is a callback to the first book, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So chapter 11, we break the bridge. He he whistles for Blackjack because Blackjack actually happens to be around and patrolling the skies. Um, Blackjack lands and he says, I thought those winds were going to knock us to Pennsylvania until we said we were with you. So we know that the wind gods doing their thing. They're actually
Mm-hmm.
protecting the skies. Um, and so Percy tells him we need to get to the Williamsburg Bridge. And this is the part where I went on a tangent about horse behavior because Blackjack lowers his neck and he says, You're darn right, boss. We flew over it on the way here and it don't look good. Hop on. And I was like, he not only wants to do what Percy says, but he anticipated that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he anticipated Percy was going to say that. And so I was like trying to determine, is this something that the Greeks said about horsemanship, or is this like Percy giving, or is this Rick giving Blackjack his own personalization? And it is a personalization for specifically Blackjack. And my
Mm-hmm.
conclusion with that is because I found Xenophon is a writer from ancient Greece who wrote this whole treatise on how to train horses. Like it's and training for different purposes too. Military, some of the most important things. He would say things like an obedient horse is like key because if your horse is disobedient, that's more dangerous than like the enemy,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And you want a horse that's eager to please, which that is Blackjack. Blackjack is very eager to make Percy happy. But the anticipating his needs, I feel like that goes a step beyond. And it's one of those things like somewhere in my soul there is a horse girl. I think it's just I we don't have horse girl money, right? Neither of us
Yeah.
could have ever been horse girls because horse girl money is a lot of money.
And I will
And
say too,
yeah.
it is like an animal thing.
Hmm.
Um, like this is just like Blackjack like just to remind everybody where he came from, which honestly hope this is going to be in the TV show.
Yes.
Blackjack was being kept by Luke, being like held prisoner and abused by Luke and his men, and Percy saved him from that. And so that is part of why Blackjack will go anywhere and do anything, anything at all for
Hmm.
Percy, because he's grateful to Percy for freeing him from being treated that way. And that just reminds me of like even just my own animals, like my the cat that died second, that last whenever that was last year, which felt like 5,000 years ago. When my sister and I got that cat, it was from like kind of like a shady like pet store, and it came up to us immediately and just started like crying and stuff. And when we brought it
Oh.
home, we said that it had separation anxiety because when we would leave the room and he couldn't like see us anymore, he would just nonstop cry. Like he was scared, and I would run out and pick him up and hold him. And then as soon as I picked him up, he would stop. And he was just like scared when we weren't around. And we could just, and I used to say that cat had PTSD like I did because when there were loud noises happening, he would like jump like I would, and it would like wake me up from like my PTSD like terror nightmares. Like
Mm-mm.
literally I would wake up and he would be in my face like meowing. And so I was like, I feel like this cat has PTSD from like whatever happened to it when it was like really little and ended up at that shop. And it is like one of those things that can happen sometimes. And Blackjack is just that kind of like pet for Percy. Mrs. O'Leary is more just like a straight up dog that is just adorable. But for
Yes.
Percy to find like Blackjack and save it from like being like basically a slave for somebody hurting him, he's just forever indebted to Percy like that. And the other Pegasus like Percy and like the other demigods because of how Percy helped free some of them. It's
Hmm.
just one of those things. Like
Well, yeah,
they
and he's also the only one that can talk to them, so.
yeah, and they're gonna want to talk to him anyway. But he also is like like I'm just imagining all the other like Poseidon children through time, how they probably talked to them like a bunch of assholes, and didn't
Yeah.
ask them like, "Are you sure you're gonna be okay if you fly into this gigantic battle with the Minotaur and stuff?" And they probably just assumed, didn't even ask them before
Mm.
doing that kind of stuff. But Percy actually asked him like, "Are you sure you're okay?" Like in Titan's Curse, he tells him to stop flying because he can tell that he is getting too tired from flying for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like stuff like that that I'm sure most of the time nobody gives a fuck about that.
Yeah. So they pull up on the battle, and Percy says we can see, or we saw the battle before we were close enough to make out the individual fighters. Cars were burning, arcs of fire streamed in both directions as flaming arrows and spears sailed through the air. So we have the Apollo cabin. Basically, they're setting down spikes in the road, they're building fiery barricades, all while dragging sleeping drivers out of their cars to get them out of harm's way. But the enemy kept advancing. So what they're facing is an entire phalanx of Dracaeni, hellhounds, and they have the Minotaur leading the charge in this, like, with just Apollo cabin holding them off. When they find Michael Yu in this point, he basically is low on arrows and just like, you
What
know,
do we do?
yeah. Um, the Minotaur, as Percy's flying in, decides to, was it a whole limousine that he throws out of him? Throws
Yeah.
like a whole limousine at him. And so he has Blackjack dive while Pork Pie and Annabeth are flying, like separately, and they had to swerve to the left. Um, let's see. So he tells Blackjack, drop us behind the lines of the Apollo cabin, stay in earshot, but get out of danger. And Blackjack says, I get to argue, boss. Swoops them down behind a overturned school bus where a couple of campers were hiding. Um, so that's where they leave them. Michael Yu ran up to us. He was definitely the shortest commando I've ever seen. He had a bandaged cut on his arm. His feathery face was smeared with soot, and his quiver was almost empty, but he was smiling like he was having a great time. And so he's basically like, "Oh, thanks for joining us. So where's everybody else?" And Percy's like,
It's just
"There's
us.
nobody else." And he's like, "Okay, we're dead."
Mm-hmm.
um, See, do you still have your flying chariot? Annabeth asked. Nah, Michael said. Left it at camp. I told Clarice she can have it, whatever, not worth fighting about anymore, but she said it was too late. We'd insulted her honor for the last time or something stupid. So this, of course, is a callback to the Iliad once again and Achilles, because at one point Agamemnon does offer Briseis back along with
Mm-hmm.
basically a dowry. Like, go ahead, have her, marry her, have all this treasure too. Please just come back. And Achilles is like, no, fuck you. I'm still not fighting for you. And so, yeah, we have this news now that Clarice almost got what she wanted. She's literally back at camp with the chariot still there, and she's still not fighting. So Percy says, "Bring your campers forward in to this position and wait for my signal. We're gonna drive the enemy back to Brooklyn." And he asks, "How do you plan to do that?" Um, and Percy basically just storms in, like, so he decides to take on this entire huge army by himself, but tells everybody else, like, just try to pick off people while I take everybody on and get everybody distracted and moving the way that I want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another thing before he takes off for this part of the battle is him and Annabeth have like a little friendly,
Mm-hmm.
like, don't I get a kiss for good luck? It's kind of a tradition, right? I figured she'd punch me. Instead, she drew her knife and stared at the army marching toward us. Come back alive, seaweed brain, then we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so she's kind of trying to be a little bit optimistic here, even in like, this isn't going to be the last time.
Yeah.
So the Minotaur spots Percy, and Percy goes right in with the insults. Hey, beef boy, didn't I kill you already? Um, let's see. He gets a hellhound lunges at him, and he sidesteps it before thinking about even hurting it, and has to literally mentally tell himself, "This is not Miss O'Leary. It's okay if I kill this hellhound."
That was one of my favorite parts of these chapters,
Hmm.
that Percy has to convince himself that it's okay for him to kill hellhounds because they're not actually his pet and
Hmm.
they are trying to hurt him, so he's not being a bad person if
Yeah.
he hurts them because he just doesn't want to hurt them. And I'm like, are is this the person people think would want to join Luke?
Hmm.
These hellhounds are running at him trying to kill him and he doesn't want to hurt them.
Well, okay, I'm about to double it and like because this is where I started doing the thing of like I'm gonna keep track of all the times where this kid is not like Luke because
Mm-hmm.
when he's seeing the Minotaur, when he's trying to like entice it into battle and doing his little insulting game, the axe with the letter Omega on it. Maybe because because the axe would be the last thing his victims ever saw. The shaft was about the same height as the Minotaur, bronze wrapped in leather. Tied around the base of each blade were lots of bead necklaces. I realized they were Camp Half Blood beads, necklaces from defeated demigods. I was so mad I imagined my eyes glowing just like the Minotaur's. Does not know who these campers are. Can't tell from the beads. Has no idea how old these beads even are. And is still like, oh hell no. This guy
Yeah.
was out here killing demigods. That is how we know he is not on Luke's side.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is the thing that makes him angry. It
mhm,
is not like needing to prove himself. It is not needing to show how better he is than everybody else. The thing that makes him so angry is how the Minotaur has been hurting other demigods. That is always what makes him upset. Attached from the narrative and story of this character, of this book series, of everything it stands for. If you think that somebody like Percy, who the only time he ever gets angry like this throughout this entire series is when he feels like people are hurting demigods or innocent people,
mhm.
like that he would ever even entertain for 5 seconds of his life joining Luke or joining anybody like Luke. Never. Nothing could
Yeah.
ever make him do it. He, like, during this battle when he's running towards the Minotaur, he's strategizing ways to fight against the demigods that are trying to kill him, but
Mhm.
knock them off of the bridge so that they
Yes.
survive.
Yeah, we'll
And
get
that
to
they're
that
just not
part
trying to hurt
next.
him anymore because he doesn't want to hurt them. Because he recognizes that these are people that were manipulated and gaslit by Luke to join and that they don't actually know what they're really doing. And so he doesn't want to hurt them. He literally like makes a strategy in his own head of how he can fight against demigods without actually killing any of them.
Crazy how like it's right there how he feels about the other demigods. So that makes him so angry that he literally chops the axe in half. So what I'm picturing is, like from the handle here, because that part would be the most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically throws the Minotaur off. The Minotaur goes moo. And so that's when he starts slicing away. Let's see. The other monsters backed up in stunned silence, making a circle around us. The Minotaur bellowed in rage. He was never very smart to begin with, but now his anger made him reckless. Legs tosses him over the side of the bridge, where he disintegrates and goes back to Tartarus. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that battle happens pretty fast, but I wanted to kind of like charge ahead because what we find out about the whole way the Achilles curse is you're going to ask how the invincible thing worked. If I magically dodged every weapon or if the weapons hit me and just didn't harm me. Honestly, I don't remember. All I knew was I wasn't going to let the monsters invade my hometown. So the way it's described here is it's like practically involuntary whatever's
Mm-hmm.
happening with Percy. And there was already some of that because the ADHD, the battle instincts, the like, being on his toes and knowing what's happening all over the place on the battlefield. But now it's just like super duper heightened to where nobody's gonna lay a finger on him if he doesn't want to.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like I imagine like when you're doing something that's like meditating, where you're just like thinking about something else so much that you're not really paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, what am I doing? But that's like what it feels like, at least to me, that he just knows what he wants to do and his body just finds a way to do it without him having to like make the active choices in the
Hmm.
moment to decide like how he's gonna fight. It just kind of goes naturally on its own. But still, it's just this part. Him with the Achilles curse is somebody that just does whatever they can to protect everybody from being hurt. That's that's the way he uses it.
Yeah, so he starts rounding through the rest of the monsters after this. Snake women, hellhounds. He says, I slashed and stabbed and whirled, and I might have even laughed once or twice, a crazy laugh that scared me as much as it did my enemies. I was aware
Hmm.
of the Apollo campers behind me shooting arrows, disrupting every attempt by the enemy to rally. Finally, the monsters turned and fled, about 20 left alive out of 200. So the monsters start retreating back towards Brooklyn, but that's when they notice that they're joining some other forces. And the other forces are being led by Kronos himself, which I also do recognize here. We've shifted from Luke slash Kronos to we're just calling him Kronos at this point.
Hmm.
So yeah, he took off his helmet. I recognized Kronos himself, his eyes like molten gold. So everybody else starts kind of faltering. Um, and Percy's like, this is when we pull back now. So
He's like,
as
okay,
they're,
never mind.
Kronos' cavalry swirled around us, slashing and yelling the insults. The Titan himself advanced leisurely, like we had all the time in the world. Being the Lord of Time, I guess he did. I tried to wound his men, not kill. That slowed me down, but these weren't monsters. They were demigods who'd fallen under Kronos' spell. I couldn't see faces under their battle helmets, but some of them had probably been my friends. So that is another. Percy would not have joined Luke's side. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter if they are literally fighting him. If it's another
Hmm.
demigod, he has their back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's like literally just because they're coming on these skeletal horses. So he's cutting the horses down, but then the kids start charging him on foot. And that's when he's like, shit, what do I do now?
Hmm.
Luckily, Blackjack and Pork Pie swoop in and just like kick people away.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say, I
but
really
yeah,
like how Percy talks about the kids, like some of them are actual kids
yeah,
that are on Luke's side, or just the other demigods that are on Luke's side, because that is how you should treat people that you know are being manipulated or abused or both by anybody. Is you
hmm
should talk to them like that. The internet really, really likes to play the game of like, how much can we shame people that are going through hell? Um,
hmm
I despise that more than anything else, and that is the thing that stops anybody from ever saying anything that's going on more than anything else of what society does. Is there's this intense need for some reason, and I can sit here and like describe why. I don't care why.
yeah,
Like, yeah, Percy could have killed all those demigods because, oh right, they joined Luke, so they don't, so you can just do whatever you want to them, right? But it's like, but they joined Luke because he lied to them. You
hmm
know that he lied to them. He might have trafficked some of these kids, because we know that he was trafficking people in the last book. Who knows if some of these kids even wanted to stay and they just got manipulated by hearing all these things that everybody else was saying, knowing that they couldn't leave. And so
yeah,
either way, even if people make like join somebody like that, you don't have to be the one to talk to them, but at least when you realize that there's no way that they could have actually made like a choice, because there's things like, because they're young, because they don't know what's going on, or whatever it is, you should like know that you're not going to be the one to save them necessarily all the time, but at least try to like back off of them.
hmm
Like a lot of people did that with me. They knew when to like stop, because I would get upset and they would stop. And people could have gone like farther, and the people that did, I stopped talking to them.
almost made it to the middle of the bridge when something strange happened. I felt a chill down my spine, but like that old saying about someone walking on your grave, behind me, Annabeth cried out in pain. I turned in time to see her fall, clutching her arm. A demigod with a bloody knife stood over her. Um, In a flash, I understood what had happened. He'd been trying to stab me. Judging from the position of his blade, he would have taken me, maybe by sheer luck, in the small of my back, my only weak point. Annabeth had intercepted the knife with her own body. But why? She didn't know about my weak spot. No one did. And it turns out the kid who did the stabbing was Ethan Nakamura.
Hmm. This is one of those big scenes that people always talk about. There's lots of fan art of this scene, of course, because she just somehow knew
hmm
that he needed help in that way that people can do sometimes, and also just like the luck that Ethan was about to kill him when he had no idea. He thought he was trying to like stab him but he didn't know that hitting him there would actually kill him.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just like the crazy happenstance of that happening in that way, but Annabeth being the thing that saves him. There's a never ending part of these like fight scenes that the thing that always saves Percy is that he cares about other people. And
Yeah.
so those people want to help him. And including this thing with Annabeth, he has this really strong bond with Annabeth, and that even if people might see that as like some sort of like a weakness or something, it actually is something that helps them get through these things
Mm.
when they normally wouldn't. But I want to talk about this part because I talked about the Marvelification of
Yes.
Percy, like trying to turn him into like a Marvel superhero or a comic book hero or something, when that's not who he is at all. Um, and this scene is one because we talked before many times about how the fandom sometimes tries to say there's like what they call dark Percy. And I'm like,
Yes.
dark Percy doesn't exist. Like, what does that even mean? And like, okay, so this scene is one of the scenes people bring up if you when I ask people like what is dark Percy. This is
Mm.
one of the scenes that people use as an example of him being like quote unquote dark. And I am just how? Like when I
Yeah.
read this scene, I was like genuinely how is this dark? He is he is protecting her
Yeah.
and he's like finding a way to keep her safe after she just got hurt protecting him. He feels really bad about that she got hurt trying to help him. But either way, it's like this is somebody he loves, that he cares about. He's telling everybody back off, like stay away
Yeah.
from this person because they're important to me. But that is not dark. That is not bad. That is not like towing the line of like being going like angry or vindictive in like a a dark, I guess, way. And it's just so weird people how people talk about him doing like these big kind of like fight scenes, and that's what I mean by like trying to turn him into a superhero when he's
Hmm.
not. The motivations that he has are nothing like how people describe him. Like not like the characters in the books, fans, how they describe him of like, oh, he's
Yeah.
doing all these crazy big scenes and power moves. And like, yeah, he is doing those things. He just like broke a bridge during like this part of the fight to stop but what is the reason why he did that? So that Kronos and his people can't get across the bridge and hurt anybody.
Yeah.
That is and there was the only way that he could make that happen. And so yeah, he was strong enough with the Achilles curse to break a bridge to make that happen, but he's not doing that to like show off or to do like some big power move or show how big and strong and tough he is. He's doing it because it's the only way that he can stop them from getting any closer. His motivation is to protect people, and
Hmm.
people talk about him as if he's this like badass superhero just like roaming through the skies doing all these things to show how big and tough he is, and look how scary he is, he doesn't even know how strong he is, and he's so everyone's so afraid of him, and because he doesn't even know how powerful he is. And it's not that he doesn't know, he just doesn't care. He
Yeah.
doesn't think that that makes him a good person. He doesn't care. Like he just doesn't care about that stuff. He doesn't think that it makes him a good hero because he can be violent. He's just like this is just a means to an end. And especially reading him protecting Annabeth, I'm like, have you guys never had people in your life that you would protect? Because I definitely have. I literally protected most people, my mom and my sister, for years from my dad. And like, I mean, actually protect. Like, there were times when I would get in his face and I would be like, back off. I'm just saying, like, this is how we are. People
Yeah.
like Percy is like that. You're very protective of the people that you love. Percy, um, people talk about him, I think, as if he has like more friends than he does. Like the
Hmm.
people that he actually trusts are like his mom and Paul, Chiron. He trusted
Grover.
Charlie, but Charlie's dead. And he trusts Annabeth and Grover, and that's it. you could have said that he trusts Thalia.
Hmm.
You could say that he trusted Clarice, but that's over now. At least in this book, he definitely can't trust
Yeah.
her right now. But even before that, he wasn't completely sure. There's not that many people that he just knows that he can go to with anything and they will help him. Even Nico in this book messed up that feeling of trust that he was building with him. And so to have somebody go after one of the people that he does trust, that he knows that he cares a lot about, that is what he's just protecting them. And the way that people are like, oh, he's so dangerous in this scene, and everyone should be afraid because of how powerful he is. It just feels really weird because it feels like the people who love this book series dehumanizing him by trying to
It's
turn him into
yeah.
like Superman, or he is like Superman actually, but like a superhero that is like doing these big moves to like show off or whatever, or just doing things in that sort of universe where when people fight they're always doing these like crazy big like battle moves and with like super strength and all these other things going on. um
Hmm.
and you don't really question like them doing all these crazy things. It's just part of like superhero battles. But Percy's a kid.
Yeah.
He's a kid. He's not even, he's about to be 16. He's a kid and he's being left alone, and he's just, and he can't tell anybody how like there's a part during these chapters where he's, you know, losing hope that they're going to win, but he's just, and he's thinking about how he can't tell anybody else what he's actually feeling because he has to be the one to like give everybody else hope that things are going to be okay. Even if he thinks it's not going to be, he can't actually tell anybody that because he's the one, he's the leader. And
Hmm.
so it's like that's, he's a kid just trying to protect people that he loves. And he uses that stuff because he knows it will get their attention. It'll
Yeah.
make people stop. But it's not like he's doing it because he's so big and powerful and tough and wants to like assert that. He has to do that in this battle because if he doesn't, everyone is going to die.
Yeah.
But it's just
Eh,
so, it just really it makes me sad. And of course, me being like a scapegoat, being so much like Percy, I'm like, is that what you guys think of us when we are like being protective of people? Because every scapegoat has people that we would murder to protect them. That's just like part of how we are. Like we don't do that kind of stuff. We give people a lot of chances. We understand a lot of times why people may do things that other people might not understand and things like that. But if you go to a certain point of hurting people that we care about, all of us are going to do that kind of thing. We just don't have patience for certain things like that, and we're going to be really protective of that person and just kind of let that go. Like, oh, I forgot to say this earlier, but
mhm.
one of our regular people for a long time on YouTube, um, they left a comment on one of the shorts that we were talking about Percy's fatal flaw, and it was one of the ones where I was talking about that his fatal flaw is not what Athena says it is, and he's
Mhm.
like, its fatal flaw is wrath, and I was like, God, that is actually what it is, because
Yeah.
it's not like being so loyal that you know, he doesn't do that. Every single book there's a time where he could be so loyal that it messes everything up, but he doesn't do it ever. But wrath is more like what it is, and it's like it almost comes out when you're angry at yourself more than anything else,
Mhm.
that you have that like overwhelming like anger towards something that you then start taking it out on. And like for him during this part, it's these people hurting demigods knowing that they don't deserve it, and it comes out with him like screaming at them being like, if you go closer to Annabeth, I will actually kill you right now. But it's not because he's like on the edge or he's wanting to kill people or be a murderer or something. It's
Yeah.
because he has to in order to protect them. And I guess it's hard seeing that stuff because I'm like, is this why people sometimes say that I'm scary? Because I'm protective of people that I care about. But it's like, you have pushed me to this. Like,
Mhm.
you have pushed me to need to pull rank in this way and need to pull out the stuff that I used to against my extremely abusive dad to get you to back off because every other thing that I've tried so far hasn't worked. So this is where I have to go to get
Yeah.
you to back off. Like, I'm thinking of like when Epic the Musical people were like going in on us and like going in on you. I was like, never mind. Like, I'm not going to sit here and watch them go in on my best friend. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the Percy move and insult them to their face so
Hmm.
that they come after me instead. And I can handle them because they're idiots. And so I just made a bunch of videos where they all started being mad at me instead. And I deleted all their comments that I didn't like. And I called them childish for not knowing how to talk about Medusa when Walker, when he was 14, knew how to understand that there were two different myths about Medusa. And instead of them ever saying anything to you ever again, they all just take it out on me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fine. Like, I'm not going to sit here. Like, you tried to talk to them. I tried to talk to them. We tried to say nothing for many days. If that's when you try all these other things and nothing else works, then I'm just going to do that and be like really in your face about it because I know that's going to get your reaction and it's going to make you stop doing what you're doing right now. But like, I don't want to do that, but it's the only thing that I know that works against people when they're in that kind of place. I don't want to do that, but I have to. If you don't leave people alone, you have to do stuff like that sometimes to get them to back off. It's the only thing that makes people when they're going over the line back off is if you do something that they see as more like challenging to them. And usually that's when they call you like crazy or whatever. I'm like, I don't care if you think that I'm crazy as long as you stop talking.
Hmm.
Like, call me whatever you want, but as long as you actually back off. But that's the only thing that ever works. Like, that's why I always go there with when people are going too far with how they're talking about abuse stuff, because it's the only thing that gets their attention.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would just keep going. And, like, I don't want to do that. Like, Percy doesn't want to do that. But, like, what other choice does he have? Ethan just tried to stab him to death
Yeah.
and accidentally stabbed Annabeth instead. He has to do that in order to get this all to stop. And it works. They're scared enough by him that they back off. And
Hmm.
the fight pretty much ends there because nobody wants to mess with him
Yeah.
when he is pulling rank like that when he usually doesn't. Like, this is the same person that was convincing himself that it's okay for him to kill hellhounds 5 minutes ago.
Hmm.
Like, he is still that same person that was trying to convince himself to hurt dogs that are trying to kill him and is trying to protect the Pegasus from being hurt by the battle that they're taking him in.
Yeah.
Like, this is the same guy. He's not, I don't know, it really gets to me about that stuff because I'm like, do you guys think that we're that scary all the time?
Yeah. So again, that dark Percy thing, he immediately as he notices that Annabeth is down and that Ethan is the one who did it, says, "Get back, no one touches her." Um Kronos comes in, says, "Interesting. Um Bravely fought Percy Jackson, but it's time to surrender or the girl dies." And Annabeth's telling him like don't do anything. She's getting soaked with blood. Um and that's when Blackjack pulls in, sweeps down, clamps his teeth on the straps of Annabeth's armor, and they soared away over the river before the enemy could even react. Someday soon I'm gonna make Pegasus soup, which is Chrono saying this, but in the meantime, I'll settle for another dead demigod. Um, Now, at this point, I love the different power stuff that happens. And I stabbed downward, but he rolled, tried to regain his footing. His scythe flew back in his hands. "So, you had the courage to visit the Styx. I had to pressure Luke in many ways to convince him if only you had supplied my host body instead. But no matter, I am still more powerful. I am a Titan." And so, yeah, the power thing, because we've seen the bounds of Percy's powers be tested a little bit more in battle in this one. We're starting to learn what he can do, what he can't do. And so this idea coming up again, because we talked about this in Sea of Monsters a little bit, that like literally all of the steps of Kronos' plan show that he wanted Percy to be the host body. Princess Andromeda being the name of the ship. You have like him doing a lot of the stuff on sea on the Princess Andromeda. And it just very much gave like if I can make this prophecy come true by literally being the child of the prophecy, then I'd be unstoppable.
Well, I will say that there is like the part at the end of Battle Labyrinth that is Like the honestly, Cronus is so much like a really abusive
Hmm.
dads, in my opinion, or I guess men, like people like that. But I picture dads because of my dad. Is that at the end of Battle of the Labyrinth, he's telling when it's when he's taking over Luke's body, he tells Percy like, "Oh, I didn't actually care
Hmm.
if you were my host body or not. I just kept doing that to make Luke think that I did, so
Hmm.
that he would try harder and he would make things happen faster." And so I will
Yeah.
say that that does make sense to me, just knowing people like that, that he would like name the ship and it be a ship, the Princess Andromeda, which is a Perseus thing, and would like make him think that he wanted his body. I honestly just think that Kronos is never satisfied with anything that he has because they never are. And so
Hmm.
because what he says is also true for Percy. Like he
Yeah.
says like, "Oh, I had to say a lot of things to convince Luke to do it." And like so did like Percy ignored Nico for over a year. Like
Yeah. He had this
for like a
offer
year and
on the
like three
table.
months or something, he was just ignoring Nico. And the only reason he ever actually did it is because Luke did it first. If Luke
Hmm.
had never done it, he never would have done it either. And so like Luke, probably did it because he thought that it was the way that he would be guaranteed to win.
Hmm.
That kind of a thing. But still like Percy wouldn't have never done it on his own if he felt like he wasn't forced to keep up with Luke's body, like literal body, and just thinking that he had to beat him in a battle.
Hmm.
And so even what he's saying there about Percy, that's still true about him. He
Yep.
put it off even way longer probably than Luke even did. But I think that's still Kronos just fucking with Luke because he's still in there.
Yeah.
And just trying to like make him so angry all the time because whenever Luke, because I mean we just brought up like Percy's fatal flaw being like wrath, of like that like rage
Hmm.
towards when you see people hurting people you care about and you just like don't care about that for a second in like a kind of usually it's a self-destructive way.
Yeah.
Luke's like fatal flaw is rage, just rage, just
Hmm.
full on rage. That's why I think the last scene is him having to take he has to take himself out because instead of like fighting everyone else ever that he ever runs into, instead it is him accepting responsibility for what he did in some weird way and taking himself out instead of blaming everybody else like he has his entire life. But like so Kronos has to be like feeding into that rage for as
Hmm.
long as he's still around,
Yeah.
because that's how it works. It's not that hard to feed into it with people like that. You just bring the things up that you know will make them really angry and not care about hurting people anymore, which is not that hard for Luke either.
Yeah.
And so, but
Unfortunately.
I will say that I think that that's honestly what Kronos is doing because Percy didn't want to do it either, dude. He just is almost like fascinated by the fact that I think
Percy
it's
did
fun
it.
that
Yeah.
he's fascinated by the fact that Percy has such a strong bond with another demigod
Hmm.
because I'm sure he fundamentally does not understand why people care about each other like that.
Yeah.
Like he would be like one of those people that's like, you know, like love is wasting time or effort or whatever because it just like hurts you or slows you down. I'm sure he doesn't understand why people do that kind of stuff and thinks that it's a weakness.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah. So, then we get some more Percy powers here. Michael notices that the bridge is already weak here while this Luke battle's going on. He alerts Percy. Percy, the bridge is already weak. Um, and Michael says, "Break it. Use your powers." It was desperate thought. No way it would work. But I stabbed Riptide into the bridge. The magic blade it sank to its hilt in the asphalt. Salt water shot from the crack like it hit a geyser. I pulled out my blade, and the fissure grew. The bridge shook and began to crumble. Chunks of the size of houses fell into the East River. So yeah, he breaks the bridge, Michael kind of disappears, which that part,
Hmm.
I don't know, is that going to come out back up later? Because I kind
Yeah.
of like, where did he go? But yeah, so 20 feet away, a bow lay in the street, its owner nowhere to be seen. He doesn't see him in the wreckage. So then let's see, then he gets a call. Um, a demigod borrowed phone. It was Selena Beauregard saying, Plaza Hotel, you better come quickly. Bring a healer from the Apollo cabin. It's Annabeth.
Hmm.
Okay, so chapter 12, Rachel makes a bad deal. Let's see. Along the way, I noticed that empty pedestals that usually held statues, Plan 23, seemed to be working. Took us only 5 minutes to reach the plaza. Um, Tactically speaking, the plaza wasn't the best place for a headquarters. It wasn't the tallest building in town, or the most centrally located, but it had old school style, and had attracted a lot of famous demigods over the years. To a bronze statue, and a statue of Pomona, the Roman goddess of plenty, says she is mad because at first they think she's Demeter, and she's like, I'm not Demeter. But here's like the one thing that I think Rick is kind of like driving home a lot in these chapters. This was his central point: is if you cared about the minor gods, you wouldn't be losing this war.
Hmm.
Um, and so she's mad at them because she's like, you're just gonna ask me to watch your bike. You think I'm Demeter? You don't even know who I am. No respect. And Percy just says, watch the bike, and then she starts cursing in Latin. But it's kind of true. And this is something, it also comes up in Harry Potter. I mean, but it comes up in Harry Potter in a much more poetic way that Joe Rowling does not even talk about in the way that she
Hmm.
could, which is they have these disenfranchised classes of people where they're like partial human or half human or whatever we want to call them. And because they are systematically discriminated against and pinned against the rest of the wizarding world, they join the bad side when shit
Hmm.
goes down. And so here we have minor gods now that are like, what the fuck do we do? The Olympians never claimed us, and the Titans might claim us at least. So
Hmm.
and yeah, that's the point that I think he's trying to make with Pomona there. And of course, Hestia being the last Olympian, the one that like nobody really talks about of the Olympians.
And we haven't gotten there yet, but
Yeah.
Ethan in this
Yeah, and
book does
Ethan,
Ethan things, and
yes.
um, and it's just, uh, and just the way that Percy treats like lesser beings. Like we were talking about how he treats animals, how he was moving like the humans, how he
Mhm.
talks to like every demigod or every, like we always, the story from like Battle of the Labyrinth with like the water nymph, where
Mhm.
he realizes that he's scaring her, and so he
Yeah.
immediately just stops, and he ends up succeeding because she helps him then, because he's not
Mhm.
being like a big brunt like superhero being like look at my big muscles. He instead is like I don't want to do that. And that's
Yeah.
what makes him end up being able to save everybody instead of the way that Heracles did it. That hurt everything else around them. Like he doesn't like want like the huge kind of like total like destruction that you see in a lot of superhero movies. He doesn't
Mhm.
want that. He wants to be able to contain it. And it's just that's the overall point anyway of this whole series of books, especially, but especially right now, is like, yeah, if the gods would have just treated beings that they thought were lesser than them a little bit, just a little bit better, like
Just a little bit.
none of this stuff would be happening necessarily the way that it would be because they wouldn't have joined. Kronos would have had to try a lot harder and it would have taken a lot longer, where he probably wouldn't have succeeded because they wouldn't be helping him.
He gets to Annabeth, and everybody's saying things like she's alive, but not really finishing the sentence. She's really not doing well. Um, let's see. Will and I pushed through a crowd of Athena kids. Will unwrapped Annabeth's bandages to examine the wound, and I wanted to faint. The bleeding had stopped, but the gash looked deep. The skin around the cut was a horrible shade of green. And Annabeth says, "Poison on the dagger. Pretty stupid of me." Um, and so, they go on their work healing it. Annabeth's in pain.
Yeah, Will
Skipping
heals it like with nothing. He's like, "Oh, it's fine."
Yeah. Poor 13-year-old Will, just like holding down the fort for the Apollo
And just,
kids.
okay, like this is one of those things that I just know about this book, but just to like make the point of how brutal this book gets. By the time this book ends, he is the oldest Apollo kid.
Oof.
He's
Yeah.
the head of Apollo by the end of the book because he's 13 and he's the oldest one.
Jeez. So yeah, he's trying to heal Annabeth, and he realizes they're low on supplies, so he sends someone out. He jots down some stationery, like, go get this stuff. We're gonna need lots of
Okay,
it
wait.
because people keep
Sidebar.
getting injured. Yeah.
As as somebody who went to New York City multiple times, my sister and I went to New York a couple times for concerts where we were there for like an entire week. And
Hmm.
them mentioning Dwayne Reed, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
um, because I started reading Percy Jackson like right after we went to New York for the first time, and there are Dwayne Reeds everywhere. We used to go into them when we were like waiting outside for the shows we were seeing to like go buy like soda or like read a magazine or whatever when we were bored. And I was just like, "Oh my God, I know those things. Those they're basically
Yeah.
like Walgreens." But only in that part of New York. I will like just bring up the fact that Becky grew up in New York, not in New
Hmm.
York City, but in New York State. And so that's probably where some of the knowledge about New York came from for him
Yeah.
to write this book, beyond like what his editors would have told them because they all were, they're all in New York City, the editors that he worked with, but still. I'm just like, because Rick did not ever live in New York. He grew up in Houston and he lived in San Francisco with Becky. And now they live in Boston. Those are the only places he's lived. So he had to get all the information about how New York City really is from other people. And that's probably where
Yeah.
he got it from because I was like, yeah, you would go to Dwayne Reed. They're 24 hours. And they're just one of those like places that just have everything in the world. But I was just cracking up remembering that.
Yeah. So, Will sends the Stoll brothers out, and they're gonna go raid drugstores now for supplies.
I like they say something like we're gonna go raid. I mean get stuff, get
Yep.
supplies.
Yeah. Let's see. Before Percy and Annabeth are left alone, Selena's kind of the last person left in there.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. She presses a cool cloth to Annabeth's forehead. This is all my fault. No, Annabeth said weakly. Selena, how is it your fault? I've never been any good at camp, she murmured. Not like you or Percy. If I was a better fighter.
Hold on. I
Yeah.
need to stop at that line. I need to for people to like we know about Selena.
Hmm.
She just said if I was a better fighter, maybe I would have like been able to do something else. The only way to interpret her saying that is her saying if I was a better fighter, I could have fought Luke off and not have to do this. Because that is the only thing that she could be talking about right there. And like, just
Hmm.
think about that for 10 seconds. Like, Luke is like 5 or 6 years older than. I think he's like 5 years older than her. And
Hmm.
since she was 13, he's been making her do all this stuff because he's been threatening her basically. And this is her saying, like, oh, maybe I was a better fighter. I could have literally fought him off so I wouldn't have to deal with this shit. Because that
Yeah.
that is honestly the only way I could interpret her saying something like that. Um, because that's what
Yeah.
she's talking about. Like that's what she's saying there. That this is my fault because I've been telling him things all these years, and like she's like,
She's a
and they
child.
just like
Yeah.
it just when she said that, it just made me think like, yeah, the times when she's been talking to Luke since Battle of the Labyrinth happened, she's been talking to Kronos. Like,
Hmm.
how scary would that be? To be having the god of time show up using probably the voice of Luke in those moments just to get her to do it, but still showing up and being like, you have to tell me.
Yeah.
Like, of course she's gonna tell him. Because what else is she gonna do? He can eviscerate her like nothing.
Yeah.
Um, but I just want to always bring that up with because that's the only, like, every other argument you can, I know this is like a thing I say all the time, but I'm just going to keep saying it over and over again, that every other argument you could ever make against, like, people who say that there's something good with Luke, or he was a good person in the end, or whatever. I feel like the only, I feel like you have to delete Selena from your mind
Hmm.
in order to ever actually feel like you could say that without sounding like a fool. Because once you remember anything that he does to her, just in this one book alone, much less all the other books, it's just like, what am I saying right now? Um,
Yeah.
what, and genuinely, like, what are people saying when they say that? And they know what happens to her. The thing that concerns me when people say that kind of thing is that I feel like the only way they could say that and actually think that that's like true is if they blame Selena for it. Um,
Yeah.
and think that it's her fault because he did that, and like, absolutely not. If you
Hmm.
saw like the story with David going on and weren't like it's Celeste's fault for being groomed by an older man who had all these things that to like tempt her with, then you should never say that about Selena either,
Yeah.
or anyone else that you ever hear anything like this about. Because if you say that about Selena, you're going to say that about people that actually happen in real life. Selena's story is the way that it is, and it's so overly brutal because that's honestly what it's like. Like, when we finally get to that scene, and I probably cry a lot, is
Yeah.
that like that scene, like, I remember it, and I remember when I read it that I was like, yeah, it really is that brutal. Like, you do feel like that, how she feels at the end of all that. You do feel like that when you go through that experience. I honestly understand everything that she does in this book about
Hmm.
why she's just like, I might as well just do this and get it over with, because I don't want to be here anymore. And it's like, yeah, most of the time you don't because you just want it to stop.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Well, especially
he's the
because,
one
like,
doing all that stuff.
well, and now we've gotten to a point because she's been the spy for so long that her boyfriend literally died and it was kind of her fault. And like at least, that's what's going in her head is if I was the spy, this wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have known the plan. Charles wouldn't have died. And they even say here, Percy thinks to himself, ever since Beckendorf died, she'd been getting worse, and every time I looked at her, it made me angry about his death all over again. Her expression reminded me of glass, like she might break any minute. I swore to myself that if I ever found the spy who cost her boyfriend his life, I would give him to Miss O'Leary as a chew toy. Which,
Mm-hmm.
like, of course he doesn't know. He's literally talking about her in the same sentence, but, like, it's gotten to the point where everybody sees how wrecked she is by this, and you kind of already are getting the impression Percy's not going to hold this against her for too long.
No, he doesn't at
Yeah.
all. And it's just, it's more like, especially when people find out about it, which is very soon,
Hmm.
they find out about it, and then they find out that, that what Luke said to her, that he would kill them, that he would kill people slower if
Yeah.
she told him things. It's like, how are you supposed to stop telling him stuff? You want to believe that that person is telling the truth. And
Hmm.
so it's this scary thing of like, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Like, what if I'm wrong and he kills everybody faster and they're just all gone and that's my fault? That's like the thing about her storyline that I think of why it's so brutal, but I love how brutal it is in a weird way, because that sort of, gaslighting and manipulation and grooming and abuse is that brutal. There are
Hmm.
no like simple, people talk about it as if there's like a simple thing of like, oh, just tell people about it and then everything will be fine. Like, you don't know that though. When it's happening to you, you don't know that.
Yeah.
If it was that easy, people wouldn't get stuck in it for as long as they do.
And
And
especially like
so,
her situation is probably frog in a boiling pot type thing where it's
yeah.
like she didn't realize how bad it was actually going to get.
Yeah, and it's also like a thing of like, now I've been doing this for all this time. Are they gonna forgive me?
Hmm.
Are they gonna believe me? Are they gonna think that I knew more or was doing this because I wanted to? Are they gonna turn against me and I'm not gonna have anything? And so that sort of thing just keeps you like frozen where you just don't do anything to change it because you're just so terrified of what is going to happen. And the
Yeah.
idea of like what will happen is is too scary that you just keep going with the situation that you're in even though you hate it. Because the idea of like you don't know how people are going to react if they do find out is scarier. And like if people understood this stuff about grooming, it would be, that's what I mean when I say it'd be infinitely easier for people to come forward if people weren't so shameful. And by that I mean like shaming to people that are in those situations of like, oh, I would never make that decision, or oh, I would never have done that kind of comments. Like that's what makes people be paralyzed and just like
Hmm.
frozen in fear. And that's why we don't say anything for years sometimes, because we're so afraid of what, that somehow if we tell other people it will somehow get worse.
Selena off on this one is she decides that she's going to be the person to bring Clarice back to battle.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, I can take a Pegasus. I know I can make it back to camp. Let me try. And Percy's just like, okay, the girl is so sad. I kind of don't want to keep her here anyway because, like, she's not going to be able to do anything at this point. So, like, maybe sending her back to camp is the safest because then at least she's there. Um,
And it's making her feel like she's doing something to help.
yeah. So, he lets her go. I can't think of anybody better to try, is what he tells her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she left, and then Annabeth and Percy are alone. Um, he says to her, "You're not gonna die while I owe you a favor. Why did you take that knife?" And she starts off with, "You would do the same for me," but then he's like, "But how did you know?" And
Mm-hmm.
like tries to dig deeper, and she eventually is like, "I didn't. I just had a feeling you were in danger, and I needed to help you, and so I did it." Um, and
I kind of
so
see that this is like my interpretation of this, and
yeah.
like I'm obviously asexual, so take it for what it means, but I see that as like, you know, when you have those moments where you're like thinking about somebody and
Hmm.
then they like text you or something at the
Yeah.
at like the same time, or like you go to like tell them, like text them something or say something to them, and at the same time they're saying something to you. That's like that kind of just like intuition, like magic, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
of just two people. That's just basically what they were doing in that moment. Like they're just
Yeah.
attached like that, and so it just comes out that way, that she just instinctively knew that he was in danger and just acted on it before even knowing what she was even doing.
Yeah. And so Percy decides at this point, and this is where I'm sure, like you, your first read through when you thought she was the spy still were
Mm-hmm.
screaming
Yeah.
because he's like, I'm just gonna tell her that this is my Achilles curse spot and show her exactly where it is. Like literally, like takes her hand and, or well, she has her hand and she's like, is it here? And he feels something as she's touching it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so she removed her hand, but I kept holding it. So you owe me, she said weakly. What else is new?
Mm-hmm.
And they do get to have this moment where they're watching like the city wake up, even though like not necessarily actually waking up, where Percy
Yeah.
again is taken back by like it's so quiet, there should be tons of honking and car noises and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is the part where he says, I wondered how many ovens had been left on when Morpheus's spell hit, how many people had fallen asleep in the middle of cooking dinner. Pretty soon there would be more fires. Everyone in New York was in danger, and all those lives depended on us. This is where another big moment happens, and this is Annabeth telling Percy about what happened, why Hermes is mad at her. Um, so he at first is like, you don't need to get into anything emotional because at this moment she's like literally poisoned, looks
Mm-hmm.
super ill,
She's still recovering
and
from it.
yeah, and so he's like, you don't have to tell me anything, and she's like, no, I want to. Last year Luke came to see me in San Francisco in person. He came to your house. This was just before we went into the labyrinth, before she faltered, but I knew what she meant, before he turned into Kronos. He came under a flag of truce. He said he only wanted 5 minutes to talk. He looked scared, Percy. He told me Kronos was going to use him to take over the world. He said he wanted to run away like the old days. He wanted me to come with him. But you didn't trust him. Of course not. I thought it was a trick. Plus, well, a lot of things had changed since the old days. I told Luke there was no way. He got mad. He said I might as well fight him right there because it was the last chance I'd get. And so um, she goes on, you don't understand, Percy. Hermes was right. Or maybe if I'd gone with him, I could have changed his mind. Um, or if I had the knife, Luke was unarmed, I could have killed him. That wouldn't have been right. Um, Luke said Kronos would use him like a stepping stone. Those were his exact words. Kronos would use Luke and become even more powerful. And so she starts speculating, what if Luke's body is only a transition? Um, what if Kronos has a plan to become even more powerful? I could have stopped him. The war is my fault. And so he starts thinking back on all of the stuff that, like, Annabeth has been told in the past couple books. So I remembered last summer when the two-headed god Janice had warned Annabeth she would have to make a major choice, and that had happened after she saw Luke. Pan had also said something to her, you will play a great role, though it may not be the role you imagined. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to ask her about the vision Hestia had shown me about the early days with Luke and Thalia. I knew it had something to do with my prophecy, but I didn't understand what. So, yeah, and the I think we've already said this in our podcast, but like the cursed blade line ends up
Mm-hmm.
coming up and being the line that has to do with Annabeth here. Um, I mean, really, her role is being this person that Luke promised to do better for and didn't. That's
Yeah.
that's really what her role is.
Yeah, like she feels like her role, and I know we said this during Battle of the Labyrinth.
Hmm.
She and even Titan's Curse. She feels like her role is to be the one that can somehow like bring him back because of he has this like weird whatever attachment, grossness, whatever you want to see it as, to her. Like we said, we it's probably likely that she would be like his thing that he would have seen in the when doing the Achilles curse too. Like you were right when you said that he may have gone to see her because seeing that may have made him want to go see her. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's part of it, but it's not that. You're like that is the ultimate path to like complete and total like self-destruction in every possible way, to think that you need to do all these things to save somebody else from themselves.
Hmm.
You cannot do that. It is not possible to do that. That person, you can help them, sure, but at a certain point, they have to actually want to do something.
Hmm.
And that's what makes me mad about how sometimes people talk about this scene because, like, yeah, I can understand that Luke would be scared during this part, realizing that, but why is he scared? He is scared because he personally is in danger. He
Yes.
doesn't care about anyone else. He is scared right now because he's realized that, like, if you remember what he said at the end of Titan's Curse when he runs into Thalia and him and Thalia fight and he pushes him off of a fucking cliff, before that happens, he says to her, like, the first thing he says to her is, oh, I thought you would be the one to kill Percy. And
Hmm.
I believe him. I
Yeah.
think that he was banking on the fact that Thalia would agree with him, that Thalia would kill Percy to defend him, and that Thalia would then take in Kronos so that he didn't have to do it. And he could just be like the right hand man person and not actually be in any danger. And after Titan's Curse, when she kicks him off the fucking cliff, and sees that no, she doesn't want to kill Percy. She's friends with Percy, and she doesn't want to join him. Obviously, she basically killed him. He would have died if he didn't have the Achilles curse already happening by that point.
Hmm.
And so like he had this plan all set up at the end of that book that Annabeth was ready to help him go to Olympus when all the gods were there for the winter solstice. He was going to show up with the Achilles curse, unable to die, and kill all of them, or at least try to, or try to kill anyone else that was there or hurt them enough to make the plan happen. Like
Yeah.
Kronos was already somewhat in his body by then, and he was invincible and couldn't die. And none of them knew that. Like nobody knew that about him yet. And so he thought he was so close to doing that, and Thalia totally derailed that plan. And so I think he shows up to Annabeth because he knows that Thalia won't listen to him at this point. And
Hmm.
but she still will. She still wants to believe that there's something good about him. And but
Yeah.
still, even if he is scared in this scene and is like, "Come run away with me," which is just absurd. Like Kronos
Yes.
is in your body right now. Where are you gonna go? You can't go anywhere to get away from him. And so I honestly think that was just him trying to get her to leave her dad's house where she was more vulnerable because nobody else was around. Like that would know that this ever happened, and just because it's just nobody would have known that she was gone.
Hmm.
If she did leave like that, nobody would have ever known that any of this would have happened. But it's just he is afraid of what will happen to him. He
Hmm.
doesn't care about all the other demigods. He doesn't care about anybody else.
No, he's bitching out of his own plan.
He's only upset because Kronos will leave him behind. Like
Hmm.
it's like congratulations for figuring that out, but also that is all he cares about. Like during this scene he's upset at her and is like, "Well, fine, then I guess you should fight me once and for all because this is the last time it's going to happen." You did
Hmm.
this. You chose to do this. There is 50,000 times that you could have stopped this at any point, including even right now. Okay, Annabeth didn't want to run away with you because nobody trusts you. And I will say for Luke, like, there's a million different times during this certain section where, like, all the people that he thought would trust him don't want anything to do with him anymore. Like, Chris Rodriguez goes back to camp. Thalia doesn't want anything to do with him. Annabeth tells him no. Percy doesn't want anything to do with him. Every person that ever met him, that ever trusts him, does not trust him and doesn't want anything to do with him anymore.
Yeah.
There, how many times do you have to be shown that what you are doing is the wrong thing and still keep barreling forward as if none of this has ever happened? That's what when Rick talks about how Luke had a million times to redeem himself when he was alive but he chose not to, that is what he meant. Like
Hmm.
these are these times when he could have like gone to camp and turned himself in.
Yeah.
He didn't need, maybe Annabeth helping him do that sort of thing would have made that process easier to like bury his pride and admit that he was wrong. That would be really, really hard for Luke, especially to admit that he was wrong about all this after he already killed some people by this point.
Hmm.
But also, like, that would be a completely different thing.
Yeah.
That would make me think that he was actually serious about like wanting to stop. And the fact that he showed up and was just like, "Run away with me because you're the one person that will still talk to me." Because I'm afraid that something that I might personally get hurt after I've hurt all these other people and I didn't care about what happened to them. That's still putting himself first. He still
Hmm.
doesn't really care about anybody else, and that's it's really frustrating how people use. It's frustrating to think that people read that scene and believed Annabeth,
Yeah.
that they agreed with her, that they thought that she was like, you know,
Yeah. We're
that
not
this was
supposed to
all her
agree with
fault.
the 15-year-old girl who's blaming herself for the world ending right now. Like we're
Yeah,
not supposed to think that she is actually a wise girl here.
no.
Um, but yeah, like this is her, she's literally in pain. She's literally having to reflect because this injury took her out of the battle and it's
Hmm.
probably I don't see her getting healed in time to go back out there. So what ends up happening from here, Miss O'Leary interrupts them coming back with Grover. And so Grover is nervous wreck, literally eating the furniture in the Plaza Hotel, talking about, well, it's actually the good stuff, so I mean, might as well eat it. And Percy's like, we're just borrowing this place, Grover.
Hmm.
And let's see, I heard about Annabeth. She's gonna be fine. She's resting. Grover says, I've mobilized most of the nature spirits in the city, well, the ones that will listen to me anyway. Which, again, going back to that theme, I said, Rick is trying to point out here that the minor gods have constantly been ignored, and so
Hmm.
their allegiance in this situation is not guaranteed. And that's what we're seeing with Grover, because even though Grover is the best person for this job to go out and recruit them, he is literally the person that cares the most about them that we've ever seen in this entire series. Not all of them are listening to him, even while he's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
let's save the entire world. So things that Grover he came across hellhounds in all sorts of places, shadow traveling inside our lines, and the dryads and satyrs are fighting them off. He had come across a young dragon that appeared in Harlem. A dozen wood nymphs died before the monster was finally defeated. And then Thalia enters the room. 20 satyrs against some giants at Fort Washington, he said, his voice trembling. Almost half of my kinsmen, river spirits drowned by the giants, and river spirits drowned the giants in the end, but um, and then Thalia says, Percy, Kronos' forces are still gathering at every bridge and tunnel, and Kronos isn't the only Titan. One of my hunters spotted a huge man in golden armor mustering an army on the Jersey shore. I'm not sure who he is, but he radiates power like only a Titan or a god. And then Percy remembers his dream. I think I said before, I think this is going to be, was it Hyperion? I
Mm-hmm.
think. It also seems like the enemy is waiting for tonight to attack. I mean, Kronos needs time to regenerate after each fight. He's still not comfortable with his new form. It's taking a lot of his power to slow time around the city. Forces are more powerful at night too, but they'll be back after sundown. Mason comes in. Percy, there's something else. The way Kronos showed up at the Williamsburg Bridge, like he knew you were going there. And he shifted his forces to our weakest points. As soon as we deployed, he changed tactics. He barely touched the Lincoln Tunnel, where the hunters were strong. He went for our weakest spots like he knew, like he had inside information. I said, the spy. And so this is when they realized the spy is within this small group of 40 kids, too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I also think, because we talked about Percy's leadership early, the way that he handles this is probably about the best he could do at this point, too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, they're all kind of like, shit, we need to take care of the spy problem now. And Percy's like, no, we keep fighting. We can't obsess about the spy. If we're suspicious of each other, we'll just tear ourselves apart. You
Yeah.
guys were awesome last night. I couldn't ask for a braver army. Let's set up a rotation for the watches. Rest up while you can. We've got a long night ahead of us. And so, like, that really is the best he could do in this situation because, like, yeah, we could go in the route of let's find the spy, let's search everybody for that Chronos bracelet, but that's just going to take up valuable time they have to rest, and we
And
don't need
also,
infighting. Yeah.
yeah. And one thing from this part I was thinking of when you were saying that was the way that he reassured them, told them, you guys did an amazing job. Don't think that you didn't do good enough. You're the best people I could have possibly imagined fighting with me, sort of stuff. It makes me think about how in the Heroes of Olympus books, everyone at Camp Half Blood is like loves him so
Hmm.
much to the point that the new kids don't like him just because of how much everybody else loves him and is
Yeah.
so preoccupied, I'll say, about where he is when they don't know where he is. Wouldn't you be too? If
Yeah.
you were in the middle of a battle like this, where it was 40 kids and you knew that you're completely cut off from everyone else, and if you don't figure this out, the world is going to end, and your
Hmm.
leader is saying things like that to you, of like, you guys did an amazing job, you're the strongest demigods of all time, I could never ask for anyone better to be helping me with this. Like, that is why these kids worship him
Yeah.
after this battle is over. They love him so much. That's why so many things in the later books happen with how camp changes in a positive way up to like the last book that's going to come out tomorrow. Them talking about the things that they are in that book is because they love him so much because he doesn't ignore the little people. He talks
Yeah.
to them and makes them feel good. He doesn't believe what he's saying. Like during this part, he's thinking, like, when you're reading his narration, he's thinking, like, I don't know how we're ever going to win. But he's not telling anybody else that. He wants them to feel
No.
like they can do it. And no matter what, he's making them be sure that they know that they're doing a great job and they're doing everything that they could and there's nothing they could do better. When do you think the last time was that these children heard positive reinforcement like that?
Exactly. Like maybe from Chiron at camp, but even then,
Yeah.
that's not guaranteed. So yeah, he's 100% just positive reinforcing his troops, and it really comes off as a good leadership thing here.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's at this point then we cut away for a dream sequence.
Yeah,
So
Percy
he
finally gets to sleep.
Yeah, I found the nearest bedroom, crashed on the canopy bed. I thought I was too wired to sleep, but my eyes closed almost immediately. So he dreams of Nico, and he sees he just dug a hole in one of Persephone's flower beds, which I didn't figure would make the queen very happy. And he starts doing his little ritual to talk to the dead. So he pours a
Hmm.
goblet of wine into the hole, um, and he asks for his mom to show herself, but instead Bianca shows up. And she says, "Don't summon our mother, Nico. She is the one spirit you are forbidden to see." And he asks why. What's our father hiding? Pain, hatred, a curse that stretches back to the great prophecy. What do you mean? I have to know. The knowledge will only hurt you. Remember what I've said. Holding grudges is a fatal flaw for children of Hades. Um, and then, let's see, he calls his mom again and he sees a scene rather than a single ghost. Um, so he sees baby Nico, baby Bianca playing in a little hotel, chasing each other around, while Maria D'Angelo, and like we even get a time period here. Um, she looks like she's from the 1940s, wearing a black dress and gloves, a black veiled hat. Um, she had Bianca's smile and Nico's eyes. On the chair next to her sat an oily man in a black pinstripe suit. With a shock, I realized it was Hades. Um, Please, my dear, you must come to the underworld. I don't care what Persephone thinks. I can keep you safe there. And Maria is saying, I'm not going to raise my kid in the underworld. And also, I don't want to deal with your wife. Um, but Hades was trying to persuade Maria, like, the best place for these kids is to go to the underworld with me. Um, let's see. Maria, listen to me. The war in Europe has turned the other gods against me. A prophecy has been made. My children are no longer safe. Poseidon and Zeus have forced me into an agreement. None of us are to have demigod children ever again. But you already have Nico and Bianca. Um, and so we find out Zeus has decreed that the children I currently have must be turned over to Camp Half Blood for proper training, but I know what that means. Um, at best, they'll be watched in prison, turned against their father. Even more likely, he will not take a chance. He won't allow my demigod children to reach 16. He'll find a way to destroy them, and I won't risk that. Um, let's see. Yeah, we also find out that at this particular point in time, Maria, I told you, Zeus gave me a deadline of last week to turn over the children. His wrath will be horrible, and I cannot hide you forever. Um, and Maria is still trying to plead with him, like they're kids. What's the worst that can happen? And he says, "You don't know my family."
Hmm.
Um, so let's see. That's when the image dissolves pretty much again, and it comes back into focus with Hades kneeling in ruins holding the broken form of Maria D'Angelo. Fire still burned all around him, lightning flashed across the sky, thunder rumbled. Little Nico and Bianca stepped at their mother's uncomprehendingly, stared at their mother uncomprehendingly. The Fury Electo appeared behind them, hissing and flapping her leathery wings. The children didn't seem to notice her. And so we find out Zeus is the one that took out Maria.
Hmm.
Um, he says, "Bring her back," and Electo warns, "You of all immortals must respect the laws of death. You can't." Um, and so he tells Electo, "Take the kids, wash their memories clean in the Lethe, and bring them to the Lotus Hotel. Zeus will not harm them there. Um, in the woman's body, take her as well, give her the ancient rites." So Electo takes the kids and Maria's body. And then we fade to just Hades, and then a new voice comes out, a girl saying, I warned you. Percy realizes pretty quickly. I realized I was looking at the Oracle of Delphi back when she was alive and young. Somehow seeing her like this was even spookier than seeing her as a mummy. And so Hades is essentially blaming the Oracle at this point for what happened to Maria. Like, you came up with a great prophecy. That's why Zeus went after my children. That's why all of this happened. And of course, the Oracle's like, I just tell what's going to happen. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do it. And Hades isn't having it, so he decides to curse the Oracle. And so he says, I swear, as long as my children remain outcasts, as long as I labor under the curse of your great prophecy, the Oracle of Delphi will never have another mortal host. You will never rest in peace. No other will take your place. Your body will wither and die, and still the Oracle's spirit will be locked inside of you. You will speak your bitter prophecies until you crumble to nothing. The Oracle will die with you.
Mm-hmm.
So then he switches over to Rachel, and she's walking along the beach in her swimsuit with a t-shirt wrapped around her waist. Um, she's writing something in the surf with her finger, and Percy says, I thought my dyslexia was acting up until I realized she was writing in ancient Greek. She basically wrote his letter in Greek letters, or
Mm-hmm.
sorry, his name in Greek letters. She stood up abruptly, backed away from the surf. Oh gods, that's what it means. And so she goes back up to her dad and she starts begging, we have to go back to New York. And he's arguing with her, like, we just got here. Why would we leave? Um, she tells him Percy's in danger. Did he call you? No, not exactly, but I know it's a feeling. Your mother and I have been looking forward to this vacation for a long time. No, you haven't. You both hate the beach. You're just too stubborn to admit it. And so Rachel's just trying to convince him something's wrong back in New York. I don't know what it is. I need to go. I need to go like take care of this. And I think we would have heard something on the news. And Rachel says, "No, not this kind of attack. Have you had any calls since we got here?" No, but it's the weekend in the middle of the summer. You always get calls, Rachel said. You've got to admit that's strange. And Rachel eventually gets to the point where she's like, look, I will do anything. I'll make a deal with you, Dad. And he's like, I'm listening. Clarion Ladies Academy. I'll go there in the fall. I won't even complain, but you have to get me back to New York right now. And so he literally opens his phone. Douglas, prep the plane. We're leaving for New York.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it takes. And what's interesting is even in the dream, like Percy's kind of like, no, wait, you
Yeah,
can't
don't
go to
do
the
that.
finishing school. Yeah. Um, let's see. He studied her like he wasn't seeing his daughter, just the young lady he wanted her to be once Clarion Academy got through with her. Um, yeah. He wakes up and it's late afternoon. They've got visitors. Visitors, I said. Thalia nodded grimly. A Titan wants to see you under a flag of truce. He has a message from Kronos. And that's where we leave off. So,
Yeah. To talk about the stuff with Nico, that is
yes.
why the gods. That is probably why Hermes wanted him to be the prophecy kid, and also
Hmm.
why the gods didn't want Nico to be, because they knew that he would find out about that.
Yeah.
And just to like reiterate the thing that I said last time, why do people like Hades? Like,
I don't
why do
know.
people talk about Hades as if he's the nicest ones to his kids? Now that I'm reading these books again, everything is his fault.
Hmm.
Like, if you want to blame one of the gods for absolutely everything, it is actually Hades' fault. Like, yes, Zeus shouldn't have done that to Maria, obviously. That's an obvious thing to state. But he is the one that curses the Oracle. And that
Hmm.
is the reason why all of this shit happens with Luke, because of what that does to his mother. And it is once again for the 7 millionth time in these chapters, Rick making the overall point that when you hurt people that you see as lesser than you, that you don't think matter, you don't know what's going to happen because of that. Like Hades didn't tell anyone because he's a little bitch. He didn't tell anybody that he cursed the Oracle of Delphi. Nobody knew about that. Like, yeah, Hermes did try to tell May Castellan not to do that because he just didn't think it was a good idea, but he generally didn't know. Nobody knew before that happened to her that there was some sort of curse on the Oracle where nobody else could possibly do it. Not until that happened to her did anyone even find that out because he didn't tell anyone that he did this. How does hurting the Oracle change anything?
Yeah.
It just makes you like a literal child. And he's sitting there being like, I'm different from my brother. You're the worst one. Like, I honestly think you're the worst one because you act like you're not like the other ones when you are just as bad. You're
Yeah.
treating your tiny little son like shit. You treated Bianca like trash. You hid the fact that their mom died this way just for you. The only reason why you don't want them to go to camp is because you think that that might make them not like you because you're a piece of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the only reason why you're wanting to do this. You want control of your kids and what they think about you. If you would stop trying to have control over everything that they do, it might be easier in the end instead of it having to be as painful as humanly possible. Because he had to know that Nico was going to find out about what happened to his mother.
Yeah.
There's no way that he wasn't going to. He was going to figure it out sometime. It didn't have to be like this. He could have found out in a better way than this, but it ended up being like this because Hades just refuses to tell him that just because it will mess up his plan.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just the overall thing of you hurt the Oracle just as a way to lash out because you felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
And how many millions of people are dead now or traumatized or hurt because you did that? And
Yeah.
you won't ever admit that it was your fault. The reason why May is like how she is, we know for sure now that it's because the Oracle was cursed. And so that's why she saw the things that she did. That's why she's severely mentally ill this time because the Oracle curse like made her like that. And so the assumption you have to make is that in the course of this book, when that gets fixed,
Mm-hmm.
and Rachel then becomes the Oracle and, the curse is gone, you have to, what, okay, she has to go back to normal
Mm-hmm.
because she's not cursed anymore.
Yeah.
What do you think she feels?
Yeah.
Like at the end of this book, she's going to wake up and she's going to be back to her normal self and she's going to find out that her son tried to kill everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. And used her as a reason for why. And he is now dead, and she is just left alone. What do you think she thinks about that? That is why I hold him most responsible for what happens to his mother. You put her through that. You were ashamed of her, you ignored her, you left her living in garbage and filth for years of her life when she did not have the capability to take care of herself. And then you have to kill yourself because you turn into a murderous idiot, only for her to wake up at the end back to her normal self to find out her entire life is destroyed and that her son spent his entire life hurting everyone that he ever ran into. Like, how do you think that makes her feel? Like, did he even think about that? Or does other people, do people think about this? Because I think about this all the time with like how she would feel
Yeah.
after waking up to that, thinking that she was protecting her son, and then waking up and finding out all of this stuff happened when she didn't have the capabilities to stop it.
That was the end of our chapters for today. Where we pick off, of course, they're going to get back to battle after this rest. We're going to figure out who that Titan is. That has a message pretty soon, too. Um, so, yeah. And if anyone wants a visual, we're like a little more than halfway done at this point. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so that's where we'll leave it for now. We might have to talk about whether or not we want to do a Monday episode, considering we are literally going to be in the same place by like
Yeah,
Tuesday
I
next
was
week.
gonna ask you about that.
Yeah, so we might not do a Monday episode and figure out a way to go on live together on Wednesday or something next week, just because
Hmm.
we have a lot going on with like that. Um,
Yeah, I'm flying to California,
yeah,
and
so
we're gonna like be in the same room as Rick Riordan,
yes,
and
it's so
possibly Becky
exciting.
too, and Marco Shiro.
Yeah. So, we'll try to figure out how to do something while we're together. At the very least, we're going to be posting content, but
Hmm.
we are going to take a break then for next week, and we'll get into the rest of Titan's Curse, not next Monday, but the Monday
Titan's
after that.
Curse.
Titan's Curse, sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm so behind. Titan's Curse is where the show's at. We're on the Last Olympian.